Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of For the Record. We are here on episode 10 of season 2, and today is a good one. I am so excited to introduce you all to my new friend, Irnise Williams, Esquire. I wanted to say that word all day on air. Who is a nurse and an attorney. She has been a nurse for 13 years, attorney for 7 years, turned a love of saving the world and medicine into a career now of helping healthcare workers, people who are building practices, growing practices, thinking about compliance and all the healthcare woes, and making a big difference, but in a very different way. Yeah. And she is here with us today. We've been on site all day in Dallas shooting compliance modules and a big new training coming out for our AR users. But I am so pleased to have you here today. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I don't think people really know what we're going to be up to over these next few months. We're going to really do some good work together.
Well, for these guys who know me, that listen to me every week, they know that I love compliance. I worked for Galderma doing training, and compliance is close to my heart. And we see practices here every single day that have Hot Mess Express written all over their face, needing us to help, and we are not attorneys. So we brought you in, the big guns. So give our audience just an idea of, in your job today, not your whole healthcare, we'll get there in a second, what do you do, as far as your day-to-day right now for healthcare, especially in medical aesthetics?
Yeah, so I relaunched my practice in 2020 and then happened into the world of medical aesthetics. And what I identified was that people struggled mostly with documentation issues, people struggled with data privacy, and they struggled with business development. Those are 3 key things that people think that they know, and they really get into the business and have no idea. And so I tried to, of course, help as many people as I could. I was referring people out to other attorneys, but essentially the compliance aspect of healthcare changes so quickly that you have to be doing it every single day to understand how to help those who are actually doing the work. And so I started creating different tools and resources, offering trainings, and then working one-on-one with some of my larger clients on building their practice, making sure that it's operating efficiently and effectively, and then putting in resources and tools to protect them and to protect their clients as well.
Well, as we say here, you're doing the Lord's work. I mean, I really feel that way. Because I think where, I met you through a friend of ours, Leslie Tracy, mutual friend, who really focuses on all things exit strategy, succession planning, like preparing your business for the next stage of your life. And one of the things I said to her when I met you is, I love the fact that you are on the positive side of it. You're trying to prevent problems before they occur. You're not fire and brimstone. You're thinking about, before you go jump off the cliff without your parachute, let me pack that box up for you, make sure you're good to go. I think a lot of our listeners have not had that luxury. They've had more of the stick and not the carrot. So thinking about sort of your background and how you got into this, what makes you go into practice and say, you're a great client for me. I want to help you get better. Like, you're on my team.
Yeah, I always look for clients who are not only just starting and excited, but driven. You have to really be ready to do deep work to actually build a successful practice. It is easy to file the paperwork that you need to start the business, put up the website, build your Acuity page or whatever you're using to build the practice. But then when it comes down to writing your SOPs, creating those policies, creating those workflows, finding clients to actually continuously support you, and then identifying services that you can provide safely is what most people don't understand. And so people want to start a business and they think, like, I'm going to do just this one thing. They can't even identify how much it costs them to provide the service, and then identify how much they're going to profit to then build a sustainable and profitable business. And so I work with clients who not only are ready to get started and grow and build, but also those who are ready to do the hard work at actually building something that is going to last for a long time.
I think that's like the litmus test, right? Because I have people who come to me all the time. This is going to sound bad when I say it out loud, who are looking for an attorney to cover their ass, to CYA. I'm like, I don't think that's what they're there. I mean, sure, they're there for that too. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like where your practice differs is people have to want to invest in getting better themselves because you're not going to do it for them or protect them when they've broken the rules. And I think in our industry, all too often, people come like, oh gosh, I think I broke a rule. Where's the attorney? Versus, I don't want to break any rules. Give me an attorney. So I don't know. I think it's a different perspective that you have.
Definitely different. I tell clients that you can put all of these resources and tools into place, but if you don't actually apply them, you don't actually use them, it defeats the purpose. Originally, I was starting with a lot of people who were very new to the industry, had taken a class, and then they were just getting started. And I'm trying to help them understand the vastness of information that they're going to need to be successful. But in reality, most people don't get it because they are not business owners. They are essentially healthcare workers who have identified a way to make money. If you're in this business just to make money, you're going to fall into so many different traps, and you're really not going to be able to build a sustainable business because you're just going to be doing it for the money. And then as soon as you get the money, you're not going to know what to do next.
Yeah, I was at an event this weekend, and Leslie, back to our friend Leslie, she's like, are you a lifestyle owner or a business owner? And that struck a chord in me. I can't tell your niece. I was like, wait a minute. That's the perfect way. Do you want a Birkin bag or do you want to open up a second location? Because those are kind of the same sort of idea. Like, we got to pick one or the other. And it was that moment of, gosh, that's like a big thing. I think compliance follows that same idea of, do you want to just do enough or be prepared in case bad things happen? And so let's take a step way back 8 years ago before you became an attorney. Because as I mentioned before, guys, she is a nurse, which I think gives you a unique perspective here. But what makes a person say, I've been a nurse for a hot minute, I'm done with that, let's go to law school? Like, what propelled you to think that was a good choice?
Yeah, so I went to undergrad in DC, and so everyone was into politics and going back to school and educated. Everyone there has 2, 3, 4 degrees. And so I knew that I wanted to get another degree, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I love policy. I knew that things in healthcare were changing. So I'm aging myself a little bit, but that was before the Affordable Care Act came out, where Barack Obama was just becoming the president, and we knew something was going to happen, but we just didn't know what. And I wanted to be a part of that change. And so I decided getting a law degree would be the best way. And then getting into law school, you now can see all of the different things in the world that's actually not that great, like healthcare and housing and the criminal justice system. And you're exposed to the fact that our systemic issues are so much greater than just healthcare. I was so focused on fixing healthcare that I didn't even understand how everything else impacted patients' healthcare as well. And so I pushed through law school, got a lot of different experiences. And then when I graduated, I had a hard time finding a job. People really struggled to identify a nurse who became a lawyer, how my skills as a nurse were transferable to a legal career, despite the fact that I did well in law school. I passed the bar. People still weren't willing to give me an opportunity. And so I ended up back in healthcare and then got really comfortable for a long time. The pandemic shook me up. I launched a practice in 2017, didn't like it, and decided I was just going to keep becoming a nurse because it was easier for me. And then in 2020, I said, you know what, like, I have a gift, I have a skill, I love people, I love helping people build things that are going to be, sustainable and last forever. And so that's why I started working with business owners, and it's really taken off. Business from 2020 to today has really taken off, and I now am able to help people in a way that I wouldn't have been able to help them before if I had either stayed and worked as a nurse or worked for a big law firm, and I wouldn't be able to work with small business owners.
Yeah, I think you have such a great story of like picking up, your bootstraps and figuring it out. We had a person on, Kim Burke, last season, same thing. She opened a practice, said, yeah, and then went back and opened it. Like, I tried twice because the first time wasn't the fit for me. It wasn't the right time in my life. And then number 2 has been a phenomenal success. So I think sometimes, it's not a failure, it's learning, it's falling forward. But I think to that point, the fact you couldn't find a job to me is shocking. I think everyone who's in any kind of professional career, though it's right now very common, you're either overqualified or underqualified, but you just got to keep digging in and doing it. And thank God you're here because now we need you. Because what I think about you is so remarkable. And I love scale. You hear me talk about scale, I'm sure, all the time. I love scale. Is you set up your practice to be almost like a consulting, marketing, training law firm. I mean, you're
Yes.
doing all the things, and you're doing it with digital assets. You can buy trainings, you can take trainings, at your leisure. You're not just saying, I do billable hours only. It's going to cost you X, and if you don't pay, you don't play. You give people a smorgasbord of ways to interact with you. And so give us an idea of how you, as a nurse, right, not a business person, came to understand how to do that model really so quickly.
So, what I don't think that we understand as nurses and healthcare workers is that we are systems thinkers. We are systems oriented. We are so accustomed to only applying systems to people's bodies and to the way we care for people. But if you take that same mindset and you apply it to business, you look at things holistically and you understand I'm one person. I can only afford to pay myself. I can maybe afford a few contractors. But in order for me to grow my business, I need to do more. And so that started with one course, one digital product, webinars, and different things. And then I got the hang of it and realized there are a lot of people who want to work with me. Either they disqualify themselves because they think they can't afford to work with me, or they're not quite sure how to work with me. And so offering different ways to work with me through either digital products, consultations, one-on-ones, just all of these different options gives people an opportunity to kind of be introduced to my mindset and the way that I think, so that they can then be comfortable with investing at a higher level to then be prepared to do more.
Yeah, I think that's people disqualify. I think what you just said is perfect because they think to themselves, like a plastic surgeon, right? I don't even want to walk in the front door because they're going to be more expensive than going to a med spa. Like we think in our mind. But I do love what you have on your site. We were just talking about this before the podcast. She has a whole page here that gives you need a lawyer, start here. Need this, start here. Need like a full checklist of things where if you're coming to her saying, I'm not ready to work with you quite yet, you have a whole resource page at no cost that gives people like a soup to nuts, paint by numbers, how to get started, like a business in a box, which I think is remarkable. But you also do a lot for startup businesses who aren't quite ready for your one-on-one yet. What are the things that you include in that, like starting up a business, watch outs, call outs? Because I think that's where, what is it, the first 5 years, like half businesses fail, 80%. That's the hard time. How do you get people off the ground without being involved, like in the minutia of their business?
Yeah, so working with one-on-one clients, I identified that they wanted the stuff. They didn't necessarily want me. They just wanted the contents. They wanted to know what rules or laws were applying to them. They wanted just the information. They did not necessarily want to talk to me because they just didn't know what to talk about. And so I created the Healthcare Business Starter Kit, which is essentially all of the tools that new med spa business owners need to get off the ground until they can afford to really start working with someone one-on-one. You can take those tools and resources to an attorney, a small business attorney in your state, and say, hey, these are the tools and resources I have. Can you just make sure that it applies to this state? But a lot of times I would refer people to attorneys who said they do healthcare law, and they get there and they know nothing about med spa. They know nothing about aesthetics. They know nothing about nurse-owned businesses or nurse practitioner-owned businesses. And now people are coming back to me saying either they didn't get what they expected or they paid a lot of money and had nothing in return. So not only do you get access to the things that you need to kind of work with an attorney on, you also get access to business checklists. Like, you need to know when you start a business, what websites do I go to once I've actually filed the paperwork to get things started? How do I learn about marketing? I share my favorite marketing book so that people can understand marketing doesn't have to be something that you don't know, you've never heard of. Get started here. And I help people build the foundational elements of just understanding business and how to get started and then how to grow. And then I provide you with the onboarding checklist. If you're bringing on employees or contractors, you need to make sure you're doing it right. You need to do things systematically. And creating a system when you never had a system is very difficult. So saying, I'm going to start with these foundational things, and then if I need to add different certifications or different qualifications, I can add that. People sometimes just need a place to start. They need a soft landing. They need to have something where they can say, okay, this is the skeleton and now I can build, versus having to do everything from scratch or find things through Facebook groups or find things online and downloading, and it's not what they really needed. They at least know that this is something coming from a nurse who's an attorney who understands what I do. And then when I'm ready and I can afford to work with someone, I can now take those tools and resources and do that. And I don't have to worry about my money being wasted.
I think there's an attorney subset that does like incorporation, like the articles of incorporation. Should you be an S corporate LLC? Should you do MSO, DSO? There's like that part of attorney land. I don't know what you call that, attorney land.
They're like basic business lawyers.
Yeah, like basic business lawyers. That's an hourly rate. I mean, actually, LegalZoom, guys, I'll tell you, I did my LLC on LegalZoom for like 1/5 the price. I was quoted to do the same thing. So just FYI, plug for LegalZoom, sponsor a podcast. No, I'm kidding. That's a different kind of attorney than really building the business with you. And I think that what I'm hearing you say is you're building it along with them, not as like the legal eagle coming in, dropping the hammer, but saying, here's things we can do strategy wise to get better. But I love the idea. You mentioned, we were talking earlier about like a monthly program that you have where you can join and monthly learn things. And I said, I'm going to go join that today. I want to hear it. Tell us how that works, because I think even from a business perspective, recurring revenue, smart, right? We want to hear about that. But secondly, how do we keep getting our cup filled up every month with new things that are happening?
Yeah, so there's a package that I have where people access that package. We do 4 one-on-one sessions just to talk about the business development plan. I refer them out to attorneys specifically if they need intellectual property or if they're ready to work on their estate or just different things that you just don't have access to. One thing I took for granted is that I know a lot of lawyers. Like I went to school with a lot of lawyers and I just have a circle full of lawyers. Most people don't. Most people don't have someone who they can pick up the phone and call. And what I tell people is when you work with me, if there are things that need to be asked, I can pick up the phone and ask one of my colleagues in a different state for free versus you having to pay a whole consultation fee and decide if it's really worth it. And sometimes people just avoid legal issues thinking they're just not a big deal or they're not going to become an issue until it becomes an issue. And now you have to pay someone a lot more money to actually get access to that information. And so I try to teach people how to build a resource of, all the different tools that they need to be good in business. So if you're looking for a marketer, like where to go first. Like, don't just go to all these random places. Actually use the tools that you can afford to actually grow and build. So they then are able to join my business development community where we talk and walk through some of the different things that come in. Like, what happens if you are really struggling with productivity? I talk about brain dumping and things that are not necessarily legal or traditionally something a business lawyer would talk about, but that's how you operate your business. You don't just operate a business by doing the work in the business. You have to work on the business, and you have to be reminded on how to do that consistently.
Yeah, I was reading on your site earlier that you're by nature a teacher, a trainer, a coach. I get that vibe from you. We've been together, guys, all day long. So it's like we're inventing new things to talk about. No, I'm kidding. We've been together all day long, and I think you have a natural desire to want to help people improve on things in their life in general, not just attorney things, but one of the things we discussed earlier is like you're even looking at clients' websites. We talked a lot about false claims in a prior training about on your website you're saying you're the best ever, that all outcomes are guaranteed. You're putting an eye on those things proactively and saying, wait a minute, take that down, not waiting for the FDA to send a letter out saying, by the way, get an attorney because we're coming for you. So, what are some of the things like we don't even think about in our mind that you're just like, oh gosh, that's egregious, we have to fix that right now?
Yeah, so when I do my business audits for new clients who've never worked with attorneys or they've worked with one who didn't help them at all, I begin to look at the business structure, which usually is not a big deal, but for some people, they are still sole proprietors. They haven't even filed the right paperwork and they're operating a business and generating revenue. We look at their websites to make sure that they're not violating any federal laws, that they have all the data privacy tools that they need to actually protect themselves. Like I said, things change so often. So when you even access the Healthcare Business Starter Kit, I send emails and say, hey, the data privacy laws have changed. Please update this now. Or I'll say, you now need a cookie, embedded into your website to make sure that people know what, information you're collecting and they can agree or not to decide to be tracked or not. So those things are things like a lawyer will tell you if you come to them at that moment, but then after that, you're on your own and you need someone to essentially support you through your growth. Because one minute you could essentially have one website with one page and it's very simple, but now you have more trainings and more services and you're not sure of what to do next. And so you need that kind of support to actually say, this is a good idea, this is not a good idea. Or sometimes people just have a question and I'll say, okay, let's jump on a call. I'll see if I can help you. If not, I can refer you out to someone who can actually get your question answered. You don't have to go running around to figure out how to, get that information.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about in our discussion earlier, like who would even think about that? We think about it because again, compliance is close to my heart and it's your all-day job. I look at everything with eagle eyes. An average, nurse injector who's busy all day in a practice isn't thinking about the fact that she has the wrong thing on her site, or she didn't do her blog correctly, or her social media has a copyright issue and she's going to get the demand letter from Instagram saying take it down or you're out. These things creep up on you and you don't expect them to happen. But as you were talking, I was thinking about, and this came up again this weekend, your CPA and your attorney, should they be like besties? Do you meet with their other members of their leadership team, other vendor people, and decide business structure, tax things? How involved are you outside of just meeting with that client one-on-one?
Very. I say, do you have a CPA? And they say no. And I'm like, here's where you can start. If you can't afford this one, then here, go to QuickBooks and they can help you find one. I really make sure that people holistically have all the support that they need. If they did their own website and it's not great, I'm going to give them someone to help them with their website. If they are essentially doing their own bookkeeping, we're going to talk about why that's not a great idea and why you need to hire someone to help you with your bookkeeping and why you need to be using something like QuickBooks to make sure that you're tracking that information. We go through all of those. We go through their financials. I said, what are your goals? How much money do you want to make? What lifestyle do you want to live? And they'll be like, oh, I want more freedom. And I'm like, you can't do that charging $159 for one service. How many people are you gonna, if you have to see 300 people in a month to make your goal, it's not sustainable. And so now their mind is like, wow, I wanted to start a business, but how do I run a business? And it's really a huge shift. And so when we walk through these audits, we're looking at all those different elements. We look at if there are any legal barriers. Many people go into relationships with people and don't sign any contracts. If you are renting a suite from someone, if you are in a business-to-business collaboration, they have a business and you have a business and now y'all are partnering, not having a contract is detrimental to your practice. You could lose everything because of someone else's mistake and error, and it's just not worth it. And so we identify all those potential risks. I provide as many resources as I can. You leave. I never want anyone to leave empty-handed. So not only in our sessions am I giving you information and helping you identify some of your goals, helping you build a business development plan, discussing all of your risks, but I make sure you leave with something because everyone needs to know, like, yes, these are my next steps, but like, what else am I missing? So we talk about trademarks. I don't do trademarks, but I make sure you're connected with an attorney who can get you a trademark at a reasonable price because everyone can't afford a $10,000 trademark, but you do need that. And then I also help people to identify how you can increase the value of your business. Like people either don't think about selling their business or they think they want to, but they have no value in their business. How do you increase the value of your business? By doing things properly. Your workflows, your processes, your policies, your intellectual property, that is the value of your business. And that's not something a typical business lawyer thinks about. They're more transactional. You need a document, I'm gonna get you a document. You have a question, I'm gonna answer your question. I'll do the research. But when it comes to holistically thinking about and building your business, you have to think about it in a different way and really identify how you can make this work for you so you're not burning yourself out from either leaving healthcare and coming into owning your own business and now either going back or quitting overall.
Well, first of all, there's a lot to unpack there. You said something that just kind of made me think about buying a practice. You know, I deal with people all the time, obviously, in AR who are buying and selling practices. And we talk a lot about the fact that the patient list really has no value because the patients can choose to go elsewhere. Like your business value is in processes, it's in documentation, it's in having good inventory, ethical bookkeeping, all these things we talk about as a good business practice. That's where the value is really innately built. Having a good patient list, a good following is more of a marketing benefit, right? It's an intangible, tangible nature of the business. So it gets really dicey. And so I'm always thinking to myself, forget building your patient list. If you don't build the business too, that there really isn't, you're not building value. You're just building, you're building busy. And busy is not productivity. So I don't know your thoughts on that, but.
Yeah, I think that we think, especially in this day and age, that social media actually equates to our value. And what I try to tell people, I don't care how big my social media following is, it's not mine. I don't own it. Instagram can take it away from me at any moment. I own my community. I own my mailing list. I own those types of things. And we don't actually invest in the things that we need to outside of what people see because we want people to see us be successful. We want people to see our likes and to see who's commenting on our page and not really understanding if you don't take the time to build something outside of this space, your business is worthless. And many people have a worthless business.
I just had a groundbreaking moment right here. Like, guys, I wish we could like rewind that you don't own your Instagram business. I mean, I've never heard someone say it so poignantly in my entire life. Like, that'll be the freaking episode title right there. You don't own Instagram. Like, those people are not your people. Your tribe is your tribe, but those are not your people. Because I think about this, they take it away. You can monetize things. Only people like you want to monetize with you. It's not really your people. Like Instagram is, you're renting space on someone else's $1 billion rocket to the sky, and it ain't yours, folks. That was okay. Signed, sealed, we're done here. Delivered.
I know Instagram's your thing where you're like, I don't get, and I think people don't understand because we have seen businesses be developed and become successful on social media. But we forget that a lot of businesses are successful and they don't have social media. A lot of businesses are solving issues and problems and dealing with things outside of what we see and are very successful. So our determination of success is tied to what we see instead of actually doing the work. And that's why I don't work with as many small new business owners as much, is because they want that. They want to, they see my social and they're like, well, how do I build a social media? I don't have any of my clients build a content plan. We don't even talk about building a social media plan, because how can you do that if you actually haven't done everything else, right? I always say, identify how people are going to come work with you. Fine. If they come work with you through social media, what does that process look like? Do you make sure that the links are actually up to date on your page? Do you make sure that the services that you're offering are up to date on your website? Is your pricing, the phone number? Those things matter, but you're worried about your follower count, or you're worried about the pictures, or you're worried about the information that you're sharing and trying to attract people that way. I tell people all the time about building a Google business page, and people are like, why? I'm like, because it's local, it's specific.
You just killed me. You just absolutely killed me.
And
Oh,
it's
they
like,
got to know that.
But the stress is, I want to build a social media, and I'm like, that's not a business. Your business is actually all of the other things that aren't sexy, that aren't cool, that aren't cute. And I never want anyone to come to me and say, I built a social media following, my business isn't great. No, we're going to build the business. And then in return, you may also build a following.
Well, and I think people have this misconception that if you build it, they will come. Instagram is a passive audience. I can sit at home at night and scroll at 4 a.m. when my little boy's asleep, snoring next to me, because he had a bad nightmare. And I'm just going. I'm not actively participating in anything. If I'm on your website, I am actively going there, actively, looking at a service, trying to book. It's an active thing for me. So I feel like Instagram, you can build a following that never monetizes or pays off for you ever. And again, you spend so much time. But we were just laughing about this earlier. Not having a website. Like, I don't care if you have 800,000 followers. If there's no website there, Google doesn't care about you. You don't exist. Like, you got to do the website work too. If you have to, and to your point, up to date. And also because from a legal perspective, who is your medical director? Who are the providers? What are their names? Like, that's where the board goes, Instagram, to see if you're a bad person, a bad apple. And then they go to website second. You're still a bad apple. Like, there's somewhere along the way you have to write the ship and say, no, we're not bad apples here. And that website is old and out of date. You've lost your shot. So what kind of things do we put on a website? Like, for like an FDA audit, they're coming to get us. What do we put on there that keeps us safe?
So I think you want to just make sure you're putting basic information on the services that you're providing. You don't want to put any guarantees. And I think sometimes people think if I put the disclaimer that it's going to protect me. That's not true. You do want to put disclaimers as needed, but that doesn't mean they're not going to investigate you. So if you have a medical director, I always suggest that you put that information there. The goal of building a compliance program or building a business with compliance elements ensures that if someone comes to look, if they find all the things that they need, they're not going to call you. Or they may send a letter and say, hey, we did an investigation. We didn't find anything. If we have any questions, we'll reach out. But when they go to your website and they don't find anything, or they find things that are against the federal laws or even your state laws, they're going to now call you. They're going to begin to investigate. And so once they start digging, they're going to keep digging. So they may come for one issue, but now they're going to say, let me see your employee files. Let me see your policies and procedures. Let me see your onboarding checklist. Let me see your trainings. They want to see the trainings that you provided for your staff. So if you're bringing on staff who are offering services, it doesn't matter what their qualifications are, what their certifications are. You also need to train them on site, and they need to have some sort of proof that you actually provided training. So bringing people onto your team and all of a sudden they're just there one day and now they're servicing patients, not appropriate. Like, those are the kind of questions that governing boards are now going to ask. And I think we kind of mentioned this before. More people are coming into the industry, which is leading to more. They may not provide regulations right now, but they're doing way more investigations. And anyone who is in this, everything is a gray area, not true. There are things that are very black and white when it comes to the board, when it comes to the medical board, the nursing board, the pharmacy board, when it comes to the Department of Health, especially if you're calling yourself a wellness practice. You better be only offering wellness services. If you are calling yourself a wellness practice and you're offering medical services and that's not clear in the information that's being provided, or it's not owned specifically by a medical doctor or a practitioner based on wherever you are in your state, they're going to come after you. And then this is another thing. We talked about telemedicine a little bit.
Girls and boys. Keep going.
And I just want y'all to understand that just because you can offer telemedicine in your state It doesn't mean that you can see patients anywhere. I don't care if they come to your practice. Be cautious about how you are navigating state laws, because it may be a waiver in this state because COVID's still existing and they're fine. And then this other state may change the laws in a day. If you're not staying up to date, you're not going to know. So all of those things have kind of been on my heart. I've been listening to the podcast and I'm like, wait, don't do this, guys. Like, they're coming after organizations who they know they can either shut down or they can get money from. They're going to give you a penalty that you may not be able to afford. So it's either going to shut your business down, but now you're also still going to owe the federal government, and they always get theirs.
Oh, they sure do. But no, I think, what you're saying to me is, like, to me, it's just such a forgotten about thing, right? People forget about these things. And having lived in the pharma side of the world, you take compliance training every year and you see these egregious amounts of, like, crazy amounts of money people have to pay. And the pharmacy industry with Sunshine Act, and we are so in tune to it as reps. When you're a sales rep, samples and this thing called DEET, you can't give them away for this and for that, and you can't spend money on their dinner. And, it's just so crazy. But you go out of the practices and they just have, again, no rules. Wild, wild west, because they've never had to have that, because they worked in a hospital where the rules were already defined for them. It's not their rules to set. They realize that they have handcuffs on. You come out on your own, like, I can do whatever I want. Actually, you really can't. I mean, I think it's more important when you're on your own to know the rules than when you're not. But I think what you said about it's not gray, I hear that all the time. It's so gray. It's really not gray. It's actually very black and white in many ways if you choose to go look for it. But you can do that, like, I don't want to know it. I don't want to see it. And then it feels gray, but it's not gray. It's black and white.
It's not. And I think that one of the things I think that people say is, if I'm not billing, then I don't necessarily have to follow federal laws. And that's not true. CMS has a far reach. The Office of the Inspector General, they have a far reach. And if anything that you're doing looks like a violation of the anti-kickback laws, or essentially pharma, all of these companies are considered pharmaceutical companies. And so if you're taking money from them and then you're also going into rooms and selling services to people who may not necessarily qualify to learn about those services, that's a violation. So understanding things like anti-kickback laws, understanding data privacy, federal laws that also do apply to you, even as a small business owner, even if it's you and maybe one other person in your business, you have to understand how important that is, because they're not taking any mercy on anyone. They don't care that you're new. They don't care that you just left the bedside. They don't care you can't afford an attorney. They're going to essentially tell you what their expectations are. And if you're not meeting them, then they're going to decide what happens next, not you.
Well, you mentioned ongoing training. So I think about Sunshine, all these things. I think about off-label indications. So to your point, and I think this is for people very confusing, even though you're not billing, you're still using an FDA-approved device or product to deliver a procedure or treatment to a patient that has a safe and effective outcome. We hope, right? God willing, safe and effective. There is still the pharmaceutical chain of command, if you will. So you're still expected to behave in accordance with the FDA and, in the patient's best interest. So if you do off-label all day long, tear troughs, baby, left and right, jaw lines, and you do not train your staff on off-label, can you go before the medical board or FDA or whoever and say, yeah, we can go off the FDA indication. We know what we're doing. We're good to go.
No. The FDA is so serious about regulating things that they've already decided need to be regulated. If they are regulating it, or if it's completely unregulated, but they still feel that it is a risk to someone, they are going to define what should happen next. They're going to say either stop, or they're going to say, tell me how you're going to rectify this issue, or they're going to say take it down off your website, but it also may come with a penalty. So avoid all of those issues by doing things the right way, documenting, by putting in policies and procedures, by training, and by actually speaking with people who know what they're talking about. I feel that it's very frustrating when people will come to me and they'll ask me questions and I'll give them all the resources, and then they'll go to see another attorney, and no shade, like, please go see other attorneys, I'm okay with that, who don't know anything about the aesthetics business, don't know anything about the healthcare world, who will tell them the exact opposite. And they're like, well, someone else told me this. And I'm saying, you don't have to believe me. I will send you the links to all of the pages. I don't make this stuff up. I literally get this from the federal government. I get this from all of their websites or their emails. This is information that I can't create on my own. And we need to essentially decide how we're going to move forward as an industry, or we're going to put ourselves at risk by bringing in more eyes, more regulations, and more restrictions that can make it harder to make money.
Well, I think people get confused to say, to that exact point, to say, well, plastic surgeon John, John Jones is doing it. Well, he can go before the board and say, I've been cutting faces open for 50, years. I know where the facial artery is at. So me injecting close to XYZ is probably within my scope of practice because I do this thing all day long. I think when people compare clinical consensus to on label, they get very confused about that. Well, the clinical consensus might be this is safe here if you know what you're doing, but how do we say you know what you're doing? What is that test that says, yep, she knows what she's doing? And if you're trained, we often say, I know it's bad to say core, non-core, but I think core can get away with saying we're trained in this because we're plastic surgeons or we're dermatologists, where for a nurse, the bar is higher. Whether that's fair or not, it's not the discussion we'll have because I have opinions about that. But the bar, whether you like it or not, it's just higher. And so I think you have to prove, that's why I think this training idea, you got to be training in your practices or sending your people to trainings, give them a CME budget to go fly somewhere, document that you've done 50 hours of CMEs in our field of specialty, aesthetic neck, shameless plug. But I think you have to do training. And people don't want to spend the money there because it's costly. I mean, it's to take off work for the whole day, train your staff, get samples, but you got to do it.
What I tell people is that you have to build a business that supports the business, right? If I need an accountant, I need to make enough money to afford an accountant. I can't essentially build a business and then think that I'm going to actually produce value and operate at the best possible way if I don't do it the right way. And I think we see people, what I hear people say all the time, well, this person's doing it that way, or I've seen this person doing it that way, or I saw an esthetician who does it this way. And I'm like, do you want to be an example? Because they will make you an example. And when I see nurses or nurse practitioners get taken down by the board, it's always because they didn't do it the right way. It's not because essentially the outcome was always bad. It's that if they had actually documented, if they had followed up appropriately, if they had the appropriate consents, if they had done things the right way, it wouldn't have even gotten to the point where they could lose their license.
Well, I would tell you this is totally diverting topics here, but we have e-prescribe in our system, which I think is paper prescriptions. I have had friends who the DEA came in because of paper prescriptions, and the nurse was writing the prescription signed by the doctor under their direction, but she wrote it. Long story short, it was a bad deal. Anyway, we do e-prescribe, and you think to yourself, it has ID me in it, so you have to have the face, matches the license. It's all going to be kosher. We've had 3 cases of fraud in the past 2 weeks where the person used a license, put their face on it, did the ID me thing, gets on the YouTube or the Zoom with the people, and they get verified to find out that the real person is, totally different guy saying, wait a minute, I'm getting now calls from the DEA saying I'm doing all these opioid prescriptions. That's not me. People are getting really smart. Like they're able to full ID me, which is like the kingdom and ruler of scheduled class drugs. And they're getting better, smarter, faster. And if you don't know that it will happen to you, it's like adverse events, not if, but when, and not prepare for that and know kind of what's going on in your practice, know everything around your practice. They're going to come, people are going to come for you, not even government. People will come for you to take your business, take what you've built, what you've earned. And so you have to fight not only your competitors and the bad guys, but also now internal regulations. And there's just a lot to do. So I think if you are a full-time injector trying to run a business, man, I don't know how you're going to do it. Like, I have no idea how you can successfully do that long term.
Yeah. What I tell people is that running the business, you normalize business operations before people even step into your business. So before people book with you, you want to be super professional. If people think that your website is raggedy, they may book with you and they're going to treat you raggedy. They're not going to pay on time. They're going to have cancellations. Like I hear a lot of people like, oh, I have all these cancellations. Why? Is it because your policies aren't up to date? Is it because you don't have great systems? When you bring someone on board and your systems are strong, it protects you on all ends. It protects you from people who are lazy and don't essentially want to follow your systems, but it also shows how serious you are about your business. And when you have checks and balances in your business, people are going to have a hard time jumping through those hoops, knowing that you could essentially catch them and then, of course, put them in jail or get them locked up for, anything that they may do, especially if it's going to harm a patient, which can impact you and take you down as well.
Well, I think about internal staffing. So we didn't discuss this a lot in our day together, but think about your hiring and onboarding of employees. I think the same rule applies. If you hire someone in the practice without systems in place, like we always laugh around here, they make fun of me that I say you should build for today what you'll be in 10 years. Because if you wait till 10 years from now, the cat's already out of the bag on that deal. How do you prepare as a business owner to have contracts? Is it non-solicitation, non-competes? Is it IP? Like, what are the things you do today as a business owner for your next hire?
Yeah, so you want to start with the job description. The job description needs to be very specific about your expectations and the qualifications that they need. It can't just be high school diploma, 1 to 2 years of this. You want to make sure that people also are a personality match. You want to make sure that people also have a work ethic match, that they're committed to doing the things that are important to you, and to ensure that if you want to not have to operate in the business every single day, that those people are responsible enough and willing to take on that type of responsibility. If someone is looking for a job just for a short period of time, that brings no value to you. You waste so much money hiring and firing people. And so you start very clearly with the job description. One of the tricks that I read in a book and then I've seen other people do is in the job description, you need to include a task that they need to do after they fill out that application. So if that means email me, what I tell people is like, send me a message on LinkedIn. One, it shows me if you have a LinkedIn profile. Two, it shows if you actually read the full job description and made it all the way to the end. And if you didn't, that means you're not paying attention to detail and you're not somebody who needs to be on my team. And so identifying those little things to ensure from the beginning, people coming in the door understand what you're expecting. If you're expecting them to go to a certain amount of trainings or to keep up with their qualifications, that needs to be stated in the job description. And then it's on that onboarding process. How are you identifying that these people are actually qualified to do what it is that they said they can do? Are you giving them a trial run? You don't have to hire someone and then wait 6 months to decide if they're good. Have a 30-day performance review, have a 90-day, have a 6 months. Identify different areas where you're going to check in and decide if this person's a good person, good fit for your team. Someone said hire quick, hire slow, fire fast.
That's our motto around here. Yeah.
And so it's like you want to take the time bringing people on, but if you know they're not a good fit, don't make excuses and don't wait because you're going to lose more in the end. And then those policies and procedures, making sure that you have policies and procedures where people have to review them and actually put them into practice. And then on top of that, have some type of internal training. So I use Canva. I record the trainings. This is my practice. This is my business. This is what we do. And I make people watch them before they actually come and on board with me, because I need you to know who I am, what I do, and who I serve before you can even have a conversation about how you're going to operate in this business.
Well, you mentioned the additional thing after the application. We use various job boards. We have a whole HRIS system. And we have some assessments afterwards where we have to know you're tech savvy and, good with customers, attention to detail. And if you don't fill those out, I don't even look at your application. And sometimes there's some really good talent, but I'm like, no, if you wouldn't take the extra 5 minutes to do what we ask of you in this moment, your best self moment, you will never do it when you're on board with us. And I know that people are filling out lots of job applications, they're filling out lots of cover letters, but I'd rather you pick 3 jobs that you really want to get and go for them with the gusto and then apply to 55 and never get any of them. Mm-hmm. But I have the same idea on this. Like, if you don't fill that out, like, you're dead to me.
Yeah,
which is sad.
But business owners aren't thinking like that. They're new. They're like, I just need a body. But putting a body in place can actually be so much more detrimental to your practice. So build the systems where you can actually operate the business on your own, and then maybe bring in a contractor. You don't have to hire someone full time. And then once you're deciding, like, this is somebody who I want to bring on as an employee, put those tools and resources in place that they can automate, which is something that I'm really big on: systems, automations, and workflows. Making sure that you're systemizing the process, you're automating the process, and you created a workflow that people have to integrate into. You don't want people to come in and run your business for you. You want them to come into a business that's being well ran, and they can either get with the culture or not.
Okay, so that leads us to, as you guys know, my favorite question: hiring experienced versus non-experienced injectors. Because I had this question a lot. You want to hire a newbie or an experienced injector? And this is exactly why I asked that question. It has nothing to do with skill set. I don't care if you can inject your little fingers off. If I've set up a process and a workflow and automations and my business is humming, and I bring you in, I would love a good competitive challenge, like challenge my thinking, help me be smarter, help me do better. But if you come in and break it all because you think it should be run differently based on your 15 years of experience, then I have done all that work to let one person disrupt everything. It's all for naught. And we are very cautious here at AR because everything we do here is very automated, because we have 6,500 practices and like 40 employees. Like, guys, do the math. The math doesn't work so well. So everything here is very automated and scaled. And so when you come here, it's like, if you don't fit into that workflow, we can't have you because you're a liability for us as a group. Like you could be Steve Jobs, God rest his soul. You can't work here, Steve. Sorry, you gotta comply, bud.
Yeah.
Or help us build it better in a way
Yes.
that leans into what we've already done and just beefs it up on steroids. Doesn't break the whole thing again. That's why I always ask that. It's like nothing to do with injecting skills. It's like I want to know how lenient you are on what you've worked for and if you're willing to give it up to start over fresh because you kind of have to in some cases.
Yeah, definitely. And I think systems is something that is foundational, and we don't talk about it, and we definitely don't do it enough. People just build the business and then they think about the systems later. But you have to identify how you're going to build your systems and how people are going to flow through your business to ensure that it's actually effective.
Well, going back to compliance, legal stuff on this, I used to teach a class for Galderma around it's called now game business, but I talked about the consultation as a prime example of if you do it the same way every single time, no matter what patient comes in, they've heard the same information. So there have been no disclaimers that weren't given. There's been no false expectations that were provided. Anyone can step into that patient's room and take care of them because we've all done it the same way. I think when you go before court, a board, a deposition, whatever it is, if you feel so confident that your people always do it the same way, you can stand with such advocacy of them to say, I know that we have a process in place and they all follow it. So what you're saying, there's no chance it happened. Like that's not how we operate at all. I think when you have no structure and things are just like, whoa, do it your own way, there is no way you could ever stand up and say that we have a process in place. And so it's, I think, legally hard to defend yourself when there is nothing, no protocol in place at all.
That's one of my documentation tips that I tell people, that you have to build a process that is consistent, that you do it the same way every time. So one, if you deviate, you know why, because it's going to be very rare that you ever had to deviate. Or if you have to defend yourself, you can easily, because some things are just rope. You don't even remember that you did it. Like, I just follow this process. And so if you can't speak specifically to that incident, they're going to then ask you, what do you normally do? And then you're able to say, well, with every other patient, this is what I've always done. And I know that I did this with this patient because these are the checks that I actually do to make sure that I'm doing it appropriately. And that's kind of a huge defense system that we take for granted because we don't think about it as a defense mechanism, but it's one that you can't really fight in court when that's your system and that's your workflow.
We use in our business, technology is different, but we use like code, like a doctor in a trauma center. We run codes like, did you test this? Did you test this? Is this connected to this? Or like a flight check pattern. Have you checked all the things? Because I do feel like employees who are new, to your point, new to practice, new to any business, they're learning so much so fast. But in your business, for sure, legal, and mine with patient safety, one mistake can be a colossal impact for your business long term. Like we don't get wiggle room here. So we want to lock them down from, especially an injector, from day one. Like you have to, I think that mixing Botox is a great example. If we all mix it differently and I pick up your bottle versus mine, I have no idea if I've given them 5 units or 10 units. And I know the sand in the jar is all the same. Trust me, I wrote the whole thing with active toxin. I get all that. But dilution matters. So it's even things like that, I think, that are just so important that you're like, meh, she mixes it her way, I do it mine. But what if your bottles get mismatched? Like, who's going to know whose is whose? So I don't know. I just think there's a lot we could do compliance-wise to SOPs are my love language.
Yeah. I think it's a cultural thing. Like, we have to build a culture of safety. And we have to essentially begin to have these conversations about the difficult things that we have to do to run a successful business and do them, even though they're not fun, they're not cute, they don't end up on Instagram, but it is something that you really, really need to do to be successful. And I promise you, people who actually do those hard things build businesses that last, or they're able to then either grow and sell, or they can start something else because they understand how to do it right the first time.
Well, I have fired a lot of people, Irnise, a lot of people in my day. Like, because again, hire slow, fire fast. And I have never had a bad experience. I work really hard to help them get to their own decision of like, I'm not really firing you, but I want you to think about what you want to do differently to make this work. And it's like, you know what, I really can't do much, so I think it's good to go. I'm a big believer in firing should not be this dramatic, like over the top thing. How do you protect people in med spas that need to fire employees and don't want to create the drama triangle and like all the litigation and the problems? Because I know, I'm guessing that's probably one of the things that you deal with quite a bit with business owners.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't put policies into place about things like call outs or schedule or just expectations. And that's why I say it starts with the job description, because when your job description is detailed, people who really don't want to do the work are not going to even read it to see if they're qualified. or they're going to apply and they're not going to be qualified. It's going to be easy for you to kind of weed them out. But as you bring people into your culture, you need to have a culture. Like, your culture can't just be, we're running a business and it's chaotic, or we'll just see who's here today and figure it out. You have to have a systematic culture, and it makes it easier to see if someone fits into that culture or if they don't. Make sure that when you are bringing people onto your team, that you know what it is that you're looking for, whether it's a weakness or whether you're just trying to bring someone with a certain type of personality to the team, so that when those things don't work out, you can identify why you're letting them go. Because if people are being let go and they are either a woman of color, or they have a sexual identity that they have a different sexual identity, they may say you're discriminating against them. And that's where employers get messed up, is now they're filing a suit saying you're discriminating against them, you're firing them because of their sexual identity, or because they're a woman, or because they're a woman of color. And there's only a specific set of protected classes that you can actually file a discrimination lawsuit against. It's not because of anything. So if you're saying I'm firing you because you've been late 7 times, make sure that those things are documented, and then people can't take that and actually win anything against you because you specifically stated why you're letting them go. Sometimes we fire people just because we don't have a good handle on what we are expecting from them, and they come into a chaotic system, so they're chaotic, and then we want to let them go because they're not adhering to a culture that they don't even understand. Be very clear if it's because of lateness, is it because of communication, is it because of they're not following policies or procedures. You have to have all that in place before you can actually identify why you're firing someone.
Yeah, I think you're firing them for a fair reason, to your point. Like, they've seen it coming. I think it's an easier pill to swallow. And I've helped people get references, because they were great, just not great for us. I think if you're a good hirer, is that a word? I don't know. If you're a good person, a good recruiter, I've hired people who were phenomenal, but not at this job. And I want to help them be successful forever, but this is just not. And I want to hope that I've helped them learn, hey, you're great, but this is your weakness. If you want to do this again, go develop that thing. Or, no, this isn't the place that you play best, and go play in the same box where you feel really confident. Because I think, not everyone's a fit for every job. And I don't know, I just think as an employer, people I talk to are like, oh, I don't want to have to fire somebody. Like, that's just terrible. Like, well, it's like cancer. And if you don't fire it, it spreads. And then when it spreads, all of your employees are going to hate you. And you're going to have a much bigger mess on your hands. Just grow a pair and go do the thing.
Exactly.
That sounds not so nice, but it's true.
It's true. And I think people need to be honest. Like, people need honest people to teach them about business, and not this, let's make 6 figures, let's build this successful business doing this one thing. People need the truth about, like, what it really takes to run a business. So.
And if you've heard you have work-life balance and you can lean out and all that BS, don't believe the hype. It is not true.
So hard.
It is so hard. And you're expected to do things that you never thought you'd have to do. And we're discussing today, like, I don't sleep. You're busy running. You're doing content creation. You're with clients, not customers, but clients. You're also doing, like, the actual work on their things. It's a lot to do. Plus, again, staying compliant, getting your taxes paid. Who thought about taxes when they were 16? Not me. Like, here I am thinking about taxes in different states, and do we have unemployment taxes and all these insurance. And another part of this is benefits for your people. Like Leslie and I discussed this weekend. If you have contractors, it's one thing, right? But 1099s don't have to have a set schedule. Like, by default, no set schedule. They have to have their own devices. Like, the rules are kind of crazy with 1099 contractors. If they work for you, give them benefits. If they're going to be here all day long helping you make money and succeed, the culture that they should come into is one of, I think, safety, right? It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want to feel safe here. I want to make enough money to survive and feel safe. If I can't protect my children with health care and myself, my spouse, I don't feel safe here. Yeah. So I just think that there's a whole benefits play that not only is it the right thing to do, but think of even 401k and, like, you got to do stuff for your people.
I think we overestimate the cost of it all as well.
Oh, yeah, we do.
We think that it's going to cost more than it does, but it's more costly to have someone who isn't covered in your practice than someone who is. And even if y'all split the cost, where, you may pay $250, they may pay $250, it's beneficial that they actually have those resources so that they can use them versus not having them at all.
And go to the doctor when they're sick and get well. I think wellness care is a big thing we miss. Someone stays in the practice and gets really, really ill because they can't afford to go to the doctor, and deductibles, and it's, long-term not a good play. But last thing I'll wrap up with here, because I can't believe we're almost like at an hour, is thinking about, like, just exit planning and succession planning and what comes next for a business. Because you're getting them on the earlier stages, right? Not brand new guys, but the earlier stages. Yeah. When they get ready to cycle out, what are the things that you have them think about to prepare their business for the next stage of selling it, or even coming back and working as a manager or, as the injector provider long term?
So I always ask people, like, what are your long-term plans and goals? If you want this, what you want to do until you retire, cool. Let's build the business for that. But if this is something that you think you want to do to then build other businesses, like, what do you need to put in place? And so we identify different resources, tools, different systems and policies that we need to put in place to ensure that it's easy to pass that on. Everyone needs a business succession plan. Everyone needs to identify people in their business who they trust to deal with all of the different elements of their business. One thing I think we don't talk about enough is how to actually meet with a wills, trust, and estates lawyer to make sure that your business is a part of your estate plan, because it is heavily regulated when it comes to a probate. Like, if you die without a will, your business is now going to have to go
It's
through
now
the
the
court.
business. Yeah, everybody that
and
can see
it's
it.
going to run through the court system, and they're going to drain your business of all of the resources and all the work that you put into it for your family to end up with nothing. And that's not what you want. And so taking into consideration the preparation that you need, not just for building the value of your business, but also ensuring that that value is passed on however you decide it needs to be passed on, whether selling the business or passing it on to someone else or winding the business down. Like, it's okay to say, I've done this, I've been successful at it, I'm good, I've invested, or I've done other things, or I want to do other things. How do you want to wind your business down? Like, really document that process and put in a marker. Like, once I hit this marker, then I'm going to wind my business down if I can't sell it. And this is how I'm going to do it. I think that's something that we don't think about enough, because we think we have to do something forever, which isn't true.
And I think, too, the other part is continuation of employees. I think about that here at AR. If we were to get an investor in the morning, like, I need my people to have a job in the morning, like to be part of our business, because they've helped to build this business, right? They're part of the fabric of what we do all day long. If you come in and start rolling heads, first of all, our name, we won't succeed, because our people are, what we do here. I think about that. If you're a practice owner, like, I hear about, oh, my girls, you talk about their injectors. Like, well, what about your girls when you sell tomorrow morning? Where are they going to go work? Like, are they in your succession plan? Are they part of this agreement to buy, sell, whatever it is that you've done? Like, you got to think about that kind of stuff, because in most cases, the business, in at least in medical aesthetics, it's the HR, right? That laser device doesn't have a lot of inherent value. The people who are running it do, but not the actual device. So I don't know. I think we have a lot to think about as an industry as we go along. And this black, white, gray thing, I agree with you. It's not gray. Much of it is very, very succinct, black and white. The rules are there. You have to just look for them and actually attack it. So, well, tell us how to find you, because you have got a multitude of resources that I know people are going to hear this and think, how do I find that lady? I want to get in touch with her.
Yeah, so I'm your nurse lawyer on all social media platforms, and I always refer to social media because it's a great place to learn. A lot of people are really distrustful of lawyers, or just distrustful of people overall, and so it's a great place to hear my voice. It sounds just like this, and to really learn about, like, what I'm doing and the work that I'm doing. So you can follow me there. I'm adding a lot more information to my YouTube page to help people in business who just can't maybe afford to, do a consultation, to have some tools and resources to get started. And then you can learn more about me and my practice, all my digital products, consultations, business audits at IrniseWilliams.com. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. And you can connect with me there. I always tell people, like, it's easier to come in and ask questions and be prepared versus saying, I don't think I need this. This isn't that important. And then needing me later because I don't do emergencies. I don't litigate.
She is not a fireman. She's too pretty for that.
Yes, I'm too much of a preventative manager. So if you are in the thick of an issue, I could potentially help you find a lawyer, but I'm not the right person for you. And I want to keep you out of trouble. So come join me. I love to connect with you and learn more about you and your business.
And by the way, I love the fact that you know your role. You're like, I'm not a firefighter. I'm not a litigator. Don't call me. I think part of being successful in business is knowing what you want to do and staying focused on the long-term goal, which is great, because I deal with trauma and fire all day long. It's not a place to be. Yeah. But for the record, you have been a fabulous, fabulous guest. And I think we have learned that we don't know a lot today. I feel like, we've learned that we don't know what we don't know. And you got to dive in. I think what you said about, you have to do the work, you have to learn, and it's not sexy, it's not fun. You don't think about, when you're slinging filler to your patient list, how to figure out the FDA looking at your Instagram. But by the way, one's more important than the other. Let's just be honest there. One is far more important than the other. And it's your license, it's your livelihood, it's your kids going to private school. All these things connected to your license and being able to practice medicine. So what you're saying to me is very important, and I am so glad you came on to our show today. And yes, in the show notes, we'll put all the details here. And we're going to have Irnise at Aesthetic Next, we hope, to share lots of details, meet with you guys, and hopefully, you guys can score some valuable information, and also hopefully get a long-term business consultant partner, Esquire, to be on your camp. But we appreciate you coming in today, and I can't wait to see what comes next for you. And by the way, she's in the marketplace for AR, so you can see some marketplace things. We'll have some compliance modules coming out very soon to keep you compliant with AR if you're one of our users. But with that, we will sign off, and we'll see you guys next week on episode 11. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.